Hey guys, tonight we begin with the morning after a medieval battle, when the shouting has stopped but the danger has not. You open your eyes on cold ground, or perhaps you never slept at all. Your clothes are stiff with mud. Somewhere nearby, a horse is still moving. Somewhere else, a man is calling a name that nobody answers. The modern instinct is to think the battle is finished now. Weapons down, dead counted, wounded helped, graves dug. But that neat sequence belongs to a world with ambulances, identification tags, medical evacuation, and people whose job begins after the fighting ends. On a medieval field, the victors may still be chasing fugitives. The wounded may lie among the dead for hours. A living enemy can be worth money. A dead one can still be worth armour, clothing, or a weapon. So the strangest thing about the morning after is that the field is not simply cleaned, it is sorted. Tonight, you are going to walk through that sorting process from first light onward, mainly in Western and Northern Europe in the later Middle Ages, where the evidence is strongest. If you enjoy quiet history like this, you can like, subscribe and comment with the place you are listening from. Nothing says bedtime quite like medieval casualty administration. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push yourself upright. That is the first achievement. The ground beneath you is uneven from feet, hooves, wheels, and men falling hard enough to stay where they landed. Grass has been flattened into dark mats. In wetter weather, churned soil can become heavy mud that grips shoes and makes every step deliberate. Broken shafts lie at angles. A helmet may sit upside down with rainwater in it. A shield is face down where someone dropped it. None of these objects looks dramatic anymore. They look inconvenient. That difference matters, because battles are usually remembered from the middle, when everyone is moving. Morning shows you what movement left behind. Before you decide to help anyone, you need to know who controls the ground. A defeated army does not vanish when its formation breaks. Men run in groups, alone, on horseback, through hedges, across fields, toward roads, bridges, woods, walls, or anything that looks like distance. Victors pursue because a fleeing enemy can regroup, escape capture, carry news, or simply remain dangerous. So even after the main clash has ended, isolated violence can continue. You hear hoofbeats beyond the rise and freeze. Friend or enemy? That question decides whether you stand up, hide, run, surrender, or pretend to be dead. There is no bright line painted across the landscape saying battle ends here. Control expands unevenly. One patch of ground may be secure while another is still being searched. A small group of armed men approaching through the mist can mean rescue if their badges match yours, capture if they do not, or robbery if they are interested mainly in whatever you still possess. You check your belt. Maybe the knife is gone. Maybe the purse is too. Morning has already started sorting. The first category is simple. Can you move? If you can walk, you become useful immediately. You can carry water, drag a companion, search for a lord, gather equipment, watch prisoners, or follow the army before it leaves you behind. If you cannot move, your world becomes much smaller. The entire battlefield may shrink to the reach of your hands and the hope that someone recognizes your voice. You step around a body and hear a sound. Not speech, more like breath pushed through clenched teeth. The man is alive. This is where the field becomes difficult to read. Medieval combat injuries could come from arrows, lances, swords, axes, blunt force, trampling, falls, and crushing in dense formations. Some wounds kill quickly, others disable without killing. A man can be unconscious and breathing, another can be awake and badly hurt. You do not have a triage tag to tie to his wrist. You have eyes, hands, familiarity, and time you may not possess. You call to him. He answers. That answer changes his category. Now he is not part of the landscape. He is a problem. Can he stand? Can you lift him? Is he one of yours? Is he important enough that someone is already searching for him? Is there a cart nearby? Is the army moving? How far is the nearest settlement, monastery, household, tent, or makeshift place where a wounded man can be laid down? Every answer creates another question. You try to pull him by the shoulders. He screams. You stop. Moving an injured body is awkward even on a clean floor. Here you are lifting dead weight through mud while wearing your own equipment, perhaps with bruised ribs, cut hands, or a leg that has been complaining since yesterday afternoon. A second man comes over. Together, you manage it. 10 steps feel like 50. Nearby, others are doing different work. Some search faces, some call names, some turn bodies over, some collect horses that can still be led. Some gather weapons, some watch men who have surrendered. Clergy may appear where circumstances allow, but not as a universal, organised service sweeping evenly across the field. Local people may arrive later, cautiously, when armed men no longer seem likely to attack them. And throughout all of this, the victorious army still has priorities of its own. It may need to move. That pressure changes everything. A commander who fears another enemy force, needs to continue a campaign, or simply wants his exhausted troops gathered cannot spend unlimited time turning the field into a careful rescue operation. Food is finite. Horses need attention. Men wander when discipline loosens. Prisoners need guarding. Valuable equipment attracts hands. The living compete with the dead for labour. You look back at the wounded man you moved. He is breathing. Good. Now what? There is no single medieval answer. That is one of the most important rules for the rest of this journey. A battle in 14th century Flanders is not automatically handled like a battle in 15th century England. Weather matters, terrain matters, who won matters, social rank matters, whether a town, camp, church, or friendly household is nearby matters. Even the speed of the army's next movement matters. So we are not searching for one universal morning after checklist. We are watching pressures repeat. First, find out who controls the ground. Then, find the living. Then, decide what can be done with them. And already, those decisions are separating people. A wealthy captured knight may have reason to announce his identity loudly, because his name can make him valuable alive. An unknown infantryman lying badly wounded nearby may have no such protection. A companion may be carried because friends know him. Another man may remain where he fell because nobody nearby knows who he is. The battle has ended as a formation of armies. It has not ended as a hierarchy. You keep walking. Your boots catch on something hidden in the grass. You look down and find a leather strap attached to a piece of equipment someone abandoned in the dark. Yesterday that object belonged to a fighter. This morning, it has become property waiting for a claimant. A few yards farther on, a man who was an enemy yesterday is sitting under guard. He is alive. He has a name, and if that name is important enough, he may now be worth far more than the equipment scattered around him. That is where the next part of the morning begins. The prisoner keeps his hands where the guards can see them. That sounds simple, until you look around and realize nobody has yet explained what under guard really means. The battle line is gone. The banners that once gave shape to thousands of men are scattered, folded, captured, or disappearing down roads. Groups that fought together yesterday may now be separated by hedges, ditches, woods, streams, and miles of unfamiliar ground. Victory is not a single switch. It spreads. A commander may know that the enemy centre is broken, while men on one flank are still fighting. A mounted pursuit may be several miles away, while infantry remain on the original field. Some fugitives throw away weapons to run faster. Others keep enough equipment to resist anyone who corners them. A small body of defeated men may reach a churchyard, manor, bridge, or patch of high ground and suddenly become difficult to remove. So when morning arrives, One of the first practical questions is not who won in the grand historical sense. It is who controls this particular piece of earth. You learn that by watching movement. Men wearing familiar badges walk openly. Others move cautiously. Horses are being gathered instead of driven away. Prisoners sit together rather than slipping off in ones and twos. Someone has enough authority to order people where to stand. That is control. It may still be temporary. You follow a cluster of men toward a shallow rise. From there, the field makes more sense. A road runs east. A wood closes the northern edge. Beyond a ditch, several bodies lie in a line where a formation probably stopped moving all at once. Then someone points toward the trees. 3 men appear. Everyone reaches for weapons. For a moment, the morning becomes yesterday again. The strangers stop. One raises both hands. Another throws down a spear. The third runs. 2 mounted men go after him. This is why pursuit matters. A defeated force is most vulnerable when order collapses. Men who once had comrades on both shoulders now have empty space around them. They can be captured individually, cut down while fleeing, drowned at crossings, trapped against obstacles, or simply scattered so thoroughly that they cannot return to the fight. For the victor, pursuit converts a broken line into a broken army. But pursuit has a cost. Every man who chases is a man no longer standing on the field. Every horse that gallops after fugitives gets more tired. Every group that disappears beyond the next ridge risks losing contact with its own side. And once soldiers begin moving through farms, roads, woods, and villages, the neat distinction between battlefield and countryside dissolves quickly. You can see the problem from the rise. The field may be won, but the army is stretched across a landscape. Messengers become important. So do banners, horns, familiar livery, landmarks, roads, and simple shouting. A commander who wants men collected has to pull them back from the very pursuit that may have made the victory decisive. He also has to know whether the enemy has another force nearby. Medieval armies often operated with poor information by modern standards. Reports arrive late, contradict one another, or come from exhausted men who saw only a small part of what happened. You hear a rumour that enemy cavalry is regrouping. Nobody knows if it is true. That uncertainty changes behaviour anyway. Men who had begun searching the ground stop and look up. Guards tighten around prisoners. A few weapons that were lying in piles are picked up again. Someone sends a rider down the road. A rumour can reorganise the morning before anyone confirms it. That is another reason the wounded may wait. Security comes first when commanders think the battle might restart. You move down from the rise and pass a group of men gathered around a captured banner. The cloth itself is damaged, but the reaction around it is not casual. Standards can identify units, commanders, and political allegiance. Capturing one can have symbolic weight far beyond the material value of fabric and wood. More importantly, its presence tells everyone something. The men who carried it lost control of this ground. Symbols help turn chaos into a story people can understand. This side stood. That side broke. That lord was captured. That banner fell. The problem is that the story becomes cleaner than the field. Near a hedge, a wounded enemy is trying to crawl. One of your men sees him. Now control becomes personal. The wounded man cannot run. He may be dangerous, harmless, valuable, unknown, hated, or simply in the way. His treatment depends on circumstances that no battlefield slogan can capture. Rank may matter. Recognition may matter. Orders may matter. Anger after a brutal fight may matter. You cannot assume that surrender creates perfect safety. But neither can you assume that every defeated man is automatically killed. That would erase one of the central realities of later medieval warfare. Captivity could be useful. A prisoner might provide information. A man of rank might be ransomed. A recognizable retainer might be exchanged or used to negotiate. Even an ordinary soldier could be more useful alive than dead if someone needed labor, intelligence, or leverage. So the victorious field begins filling with temporary categories. Captured, guarded, recognized, unrecognized, worth questioning, worth ransoming, not worth much at all. And the categories can change quickly. The prisoner you saw earlier speaks to one of the guards. He gives a name. The guard does not react. He gives another name, this time the name of the lord he serves. That works better. A different man is called over. Questions begin. Where is your lord? Is he alive? Who are you? What household? Who can pay? The morning is becoming administrative, but only in the roughest possible way. There are no printed forms. Memory, reputation, heraldry, witnesses, clothing, speech, seals, companions, and personal recognition do the work that documents might do later. Mistakes are easy. A man can lie about who he is. A captor can exaggerate the importance of a prisoner. Two soldiers can argue over who actually took him. A prisoner who looks rich may not be rich. A man who looks ordinary may have connections worth money. So identity becomes a battlefield resource. You notice something else. The guards are no longer looking at the prisoner as an enemy in the same way. They are looking at him as a claim. That change is subtle, but enormous. A few hours earlier, killing him may have seemed useful. Now keeping him alive may be more profitable. The violence has not disappeared. It has been redirected by value. Around you, the field continues to settle into victor and defeated, guard and captive, seeker and sought. Fewer men are running. More are being counted, questioned, moved, watched, or searched. The battle is becoming legible. And as soon as it becomes legible, ownership begins. Not only of prisoners, of horses, of weapons, of armour, of bodies. The next question is no longer simply who controls the field. It is who gets to claim what the field contains. You move away from the prisoners and toward the part of the field where the ground is thickest with bodies. At first, nothing moves. Then a hand lifts. Only a few inches, it drops again. That tiny motion changes everything. From a distance, a battlefield after the fighting looks still. Up close, it is not still at all. Men groan, someone coughs, someone tries to roll onto one side and cannot. Another man lies silent but opens his eyes when a boot scrapes beside him. The problem is immediate. Who is dead? Who is unconscious? Who is badly wounded, but still salvageable? And who is alive now, but may not remain alive for long? You kneel beside one man. His face is muddy. His clothing is torn at the shoulder. You call to him. No answer. You put a hand near his mouth. Breath. Weak. But there. That means he is not a corpse yet. There is no organised battlefield triage team arriving with stretchers, numbered tags, and standardised priorities. Help depends on who is nearby, what they can recognise, what they can carry, where they can take someone, and whether the army has time to stay. So the first form of medicine is often recognition. A brother recognises a brother. A servant recognises his lord. A companion knows the voice coming from behind a shield. A retainer remembers where his captain fell. Those social ties can matter because the field is too large and too confused for every wounded man to receive equal attention. You hear someone shouting a name. Then another. The same name again. A group spreads out. They are not searching randomly. They are looking for one particular man. That man may be important, beloved, responsible for others, valuable to his household, or simply someone whose friends refuse to leave without him. This is where the morning becomes deeply uneven. One wounded fighter may have 6 people searching for him. Another may have nobody, not because his pain is smaller, because his network is. You step around a broken spear and almost place your foot on a man's arm. He wakes with a gasp. For a second, both of you recoil. Then he says something you cannot understand. His accent is wrong. Enemy. Now the practical problem changes again. A wounded enemy is not simply a medical case. He may be a prisoner. He may be dangerous if he still has a knife. He may be worth money if he can identify himself. He may be too badly hurt to move. He may be abandoned because no one wants the burden. The same body can belong to several categories at once. Wounded, enemy, possible prisoner, possible ransom, possible corpse by noon. That uncertainty is the centre of the morning. You search his belt first. Nothing there. Then you look for a weapon near his hand. A short blade lies in the mud. You kick it away. Only then do you lean closer. This is not cruelty. It is caution. Yesterday, this man was trying to survive by helping kill people on your side. A few hours of darkness do not erase that. But the darkness can change what he is worth. You call another man over. Together you try to sit the prisoner up. He cries out and nearly collapses. His leg bends badly below the knee. That ends the walking plan. Now you need a way to carry him. A cloak can become a drag. A shield can become a crude stretcher. 2 poles with fabric between them can carry weight if someone has time to improvise. A cart is better, if there is one. A horse may help, if the wounded man can be placed on it and if the horse is available for that purpose. Every solution consumes something. Hands, time, cloth, wood, animal strength, attention. That is why rescue is not just a question of compassion. It is a question of resources. You look across the field and see men making those calculations everywhere. One pair carries a wounded companion between them, his arms over their shoulders. Another group drags a man by his coat because they cannot lift him properly. Someone pours water into another man's mouth. A priest bends over a figure who does not seem likely to be moved at all. A horse with an empty saddle wanders through the scene until someone catches its bridle. Nothing is coordinated in one grand system. Yet patterns appear. The mobile help the immobile. The recognized are easier to claim. The important attract attention. The nearby are easier to save than the distant. And men whose wounds make movement impossible are dependent on whether someone is willing and able to spend the effort. You find another body. This one is cold. No breath. No response. No urgency. That sounds harsh. But urgency belongs to the living. The dead can wait. The wounded cannot. That simple fact pushes the morning forward. Bodies that were central to the violence yesterday begin to become obstacles to the work of today. A dead man blocks a path. A dead horse blocks more of it. A fallen shield hides a wound beneath it. A pile of bodies near a narrow passage can make it difficult to reach someone still calling from the other side. So men begin moving the dead for practical reasons before formal burial even enters the picture. They pull, turn, search, separate, and every time a body moves, something may appear underneath. A weapon, a purse, a glove, a belt, a badge, another body, sometimes another survivor. You help roll a man onto his back. He suddenly sucks in air. Everyone jumps. He had been pinned partly beneath someone else. Now he is conscious enough to speak. Barely, but speech gives information. A name, a household, a village, a lord, perhaps even the name of someone who can identify him later. That matters because the field is beginning to lose individual identities. Helmets are off. Faces are dirty. Clothes are torn. Blood changes appearance. Men who look distinct in formation can become hard to tell apart once stripped of position, banner, and companions. If no one knows your name, your body may eventually become just one among many. You feel that possibility as you move farther from the center of the field. The shouting is softer here. The searching groups are fewer. A man lies beside a ditch and calls once. Then again, nobody answers. You go toward him. For now, that is enough to change his chances. But soon another decision will have to be made. You have found the living. Now you must decide who gets carried first. You have found the living. Now the harder part begins. There are too many of them. Not too many in the sense that every field is covered with thousands of wounded men. Medieval battles varied enormously in size, intensity, terrain, and casualty rate. The problem is simpler and more immediate. There are more injured bodies than the people nearby can move at once. So someone waits. You look at 3 men. One can stand if 2 people support him. One can speak, but cannot put weight on his leg. The third does not answer at all. Who goes first? There is no neutral machine making that decision. There are only people. A companion grabs the first man because he knows him. 2 retainers go straight to the second because they recognize his coat. Nobody moves the third. Not yet. This is where modern expectations become misleading. We are used to rescue as a specialized system. The injured are classified by medical urgency, moved by trained personnel, and sent toward organized treatment. On a medieval battlefield, rescue is much more entangled with relationship, rank, manpower, distance, military pressure, and chance. You may help the person you know. You may help the person your lord ordered you to find. You may help the man who can walk because he costs less effort. You may help the man who cannot walk because leaving him means certain death. You may leave both because the army is moving. Every choice has a cost. You kneel beside the man with the injured leg. He is conscious enough to tell you where it hurts. That helps. He cannot rise. You and another man each take an arm and lift. For a moment, it works. Then his leg drags across the ground. He swears. You lower him again. The problem is not courage. It is leverage. A human body is heavy, awkward, and badly designed for carrying when it cannot help you. Armour, wet clothing, belts, boots, and equipment add more weight. If the wounded man is still wearing protective gear, someone may remove parts of it simply to make movement possible. That creates another small transformation. An object that protected him yesterday becomes a burden today. You unfasten what you can. A helmet comes off first. Then perhaps a heavier piece of equipment if it can be removed without making the injury worse. The goal is practical. Make the man movable. Around you, other people are improvising. A cloak becomes a sling. A door, board, ladder, or shield can become a carrying surface if one is available and strong enough. A cart can move several men, but carts are valuable for food, baggage, equipment, and the army's own movement. Horses are valuable too. The fact that an animal or wagon exists does not mean it is free for casualty transport. Resources already have jobs. The wounded are competing with those jobs. You finally get the man onto a shield. Now 4 hands are required. That means 4 hands are not collecting horses. They're not guarding prisoners. They are not searching for missing officers. They are not gathering food. They are not watching the road. Rescue consumes the army that performs it. This is why proximity matters so much. A wounded man lying 50 paces from shelter is one problem, A wounded man lying half a mile away across churned ground is another. Distance converts compassion into labour. You feel it in your shoulders after the first 100 steps. The shield tilts. Someone tells you to lift higher. The wounded man tells everyone to stop. Nobody does. If you put him down every time he complains, you may never reach anywhere useful. So the rescue itself hurts him. Another trade-off? You cross a patch of firmer ground and pass a man walking with his arm around a friend's neck. He is pale, but mobile. That makes him comparatively fortunate. A walking wounded man carries part of his own rescue burden. He can move toward water, shelter, clergy, a surgeon, a camp, a town, or whatever care is actually available nearby. The man on your shield cannot. His survival depends on other bodies staying strong enough to move his. This is where rank can enter with uncomfortable force. An important lord may have servants, household men, companions, horses, and people who know exactly who he is. A common soldier may have friends too, and those bonds matter enormously. But he may not have a household organised around finding him. He may not have a horse waiting. He may not have anyone whose future depends on his survival. Status does not make every elite man safe. It changes the resources that can gather around him. You see that difference near the edge of the field? A small group is searching carefully among bodies. They are asking everyone the same question. Have you seen him? They describe clothing, a device, a horse, a place in the line. They are looking for one man, because one man matters to their entire group. A few yards away, another wounded fighter calls for water. Nobody knows his name. The contrast is quiet. That makes it worse. You put down the shield at last. The wounded man is breathing hard. So are you? Someone brings water. Someone else looks at the injury. What happens next depends on what kind of care can actually be reached. Medieval armies could include people with practical surgical experience, and towns, households, religious institutions, and local communities could become part of treatment after the battle. But there is no reason to imagine one smooth medical chain stretching from every patch of ground to a prepared bed. Care is local, uneven, often improvised, and every delay matters differently depending on the wound. Bleeding may kill quickly. Crushing injuries may be severe even when little is visible. Broken bones can leave a man helpless. Infection belongs more to the days that follow, but the morning decides whether many men reach those days at all. You stand again. Your hands are shaking from effort. Now another voice calls from farther out. You look toward it. Then back at the man you have just carried. That moment contains the whole problem. You cannot be in two places. Neither can anyone else. So the battlefield creates priorities even when nobody formally announces them. Move the men who can be moved. Find the men who matter to your group. Help the nearby before the distant. Use carts where you can. Use shoulders where you cannot. And hope the army stays long enough for the work to continue. Then a guard passes with 2 prisoners. Both are walking under their own power. One of them is dressed well enough that several men keep looking at him. You have just spent 4 people carrying 1 wounded companion. That prisoner needs only 1 guard. And unlike the man on the shield, he may be worth money. The morning is about to reveal a colder kind of priority. A wounded enemy with the right name may not merely be rescued. He may become an investment. The prisoner with the good clothes is brought closer. He does something interesting. He tells you his name before anyone asks. That is not vanity. It is strategy. On a later medieval battlefield, especially among men of rank, identity can become protection. A knight, lord, wealthy retainer, or well-connected man may be worth more alive than dead, because captivity can produce ransom. His body is no longer only a military threat, it is also a financial claim. So he speaks clearly. His name, his lord, his family, perhaps the place he comes from. Anything that helps prove he is someone worth keeping. The guard listens more carefully now. A few hours earlier, the same man may have been struck at with a sword, spear, axe, or lance. Now someone may offer him water. That change can feel almost absurd. Nothing about the prisoner has become safer or kinder by itself. His value changed, and value changes behavior. You stand nearby while two men argue over who captured him. This matters because a valuable prisoner does not simply belong to the army in some vague sense. Custom, command authority, household relationships, and agreements over spoils could shape who had a claim. A captor might expect financial benefit. A commander might assert rights over an especially important prisoner. Someone else may say the man surrendered to him first. The prisoner listens. His life is now tied to an ownership dispute. That is uncomfortable language, but useful. Captivity creates custody. Custody can create profit. Profit creates arguments. The guard points to a man farther up the road. You are told to take the prisoner there. So you begin walking. He is tired, but unlike the wounded man from earlier, he can carry his own weight. That makes him cheap to move. One armed escort can control him if he cooperates. He knows cooperation is sensible because running would turn a potentially valuable captive back into a fleeing enemy. That would be a terrible career decision. You keep moving. The road is littered with signs of flight. A glove, a broken strap, a discarded shield, one shoe, a small knife pushed into the mud by wagon wheels. The prisoner notices none of it. He is thinking about recognition. Can someone confirm who he is? That question matters because ransom depends on trust, reputation, documentation, witnesses, and connections. A man can claim to be wealthy. That does not make money appear. Someone has to believe he can actually produce payment. Games travel through networks. Households know households. Heraldic devices can help. Servants recognize faces. Companions identify each other. Letters, seals, oaths, and later negotiation can establish what a muddy battlefield cannot. For the moment, the captor has only a possibility. You reach a group gathered around several prisoners. The differences among them are obvious. One sits on a cloak. Another sits directly on the ground. One still wears expensive pieces of equipment. Another has already lost almost everything beyond a tunic and boots. One has a servant beside him who was captured too. Another keeps repeating his name to people who do not seem impressed. Being captured does not erase hierarchy. It carries hierarchy into a new form. A noble captive may expect treatment shaped by his status, especially if both sides recognize the conventions that make ransom possible. Food, lodging, physical restraint, freedom of movement, and supervision can vary enormously according to circumstances and trust. But do not turn this into a comfortable hotel with swords outside. A prisoner is still a prisoner. He can be threatened, moved, confined, separated from companions, pressured to promise payment, and if his captor believes he may escape, restraints can become more serious. The economic logic does not remove coercion. It gives coercion a purpose. You watch one prisoner hand over a ring. Perhaps it becomes part of an immediate settlement. Perhaps it is simply taken. The exact arrangement varies. That variation is important because ransom is not one neat transaction performed at the edge of every battlefield. Some agreements can take time. Captives may be held for months or longer. Negotiations can involve families, lords, intermediaries, creditors, guarantors, and property. The battle may last a day. Its debts can last years. That is the hidden extension of violence. A sword wound is obvious. A ransom debt is quieter. But a family raising money for release may sell property, borrow, call in favours, or rearrange obligations long after the field has been cleared. The morning after the battle is where that chain can begin. The prisoner you escorted is questioned again. This time, someone recognises the name of his lord. The mood shifts immediately. He is told to sit apart from the others. Not freed, not honoured as a guest, just separated. Potentially valuable. That one decision protects him more effectively than any speech about chivalry could. Money has created a reason to preserve his body. You notice the contrast when another captive arrives. This man is poorly dressed. He gives a name. Nobody recognizes it. He gives the name of a village. Still nothing. He says he serves a minor household. The men listening exchange glances. His problem is not that he has no human value. His problem is that the system around him cannot easily convert that value into money, influence, or information. So what is he worth to his captor? Maybe labour? Maybe exchange? Maybe intelligence? Maybe very little. This is where the romantic image of chivalric capture becomes dangerous if taken too far. The customs surrounding honourable surrender and ransom did not protect everyone equally. They worked best when status was legible, when a man could prove who he was, when someone had an incentive to keep him alive, when the battlefield situation allowed capture in the first place. That last condition matters, because all of this calm calculation exists only after someone successfully survives the violent moment of surrender. A man has to stop fighting. The other side has to accept that. Both need enough control for the transition from combat to custody to happen. In close fighting, panic, anger, confusion, or tactical pressure can destroy that transition in seconds. You can see how fragile the system is. One prisoner is money. Another is a burden. A third may know something useful. A fourth is badly wounded and may die before anyone negotiates anything. There is no universal price list. There is only status-meeting circumstance. The well-dressed prisoner looks toward you. He asks for water. This time, someone gives it to him without hesitation. Not because the morning has become merciful, because a thirsty investment is still an investment. And that is the point where the comfortable version of ransom begins to fail. If valuable prisoners are worth preserving, you might expect them always to be preserved. They are not. Sometimes, the pressures of battle make even profitable captives expendable. That is where the next part of the morning turns darker. The comfortable logic of ransom works only while the battlefield allows it to work. You can see the weakness immediately. A prisoner is valuable because somebody expects there will be a tomorrow. There must be time to identify him, guard him, negotiate, send messages, gather money, and eventually arrange release. All of that depends on one basic condition. The captor must still feel safe enough to keep him alive. Now reverse the conditions, not as a dramatic fantasy, as a practical battlefield problem. You are standing among prisoners when someone comes running from the edge of the field. He says enemy troops are forming again. Perhaps he is wrong. Perhaps he saw fugitives collecting around a banner. Perhaps a fresh body of men really is approaching. Nobody has time to investigate calmly. The guards look at the prisoners. A few minutes ago, those men were assets. Now they are armed enemies without weapons. That sounds safer than it is. If fighting starts again, guards may have to leave them. Prisoners may seize dropped weapons. They may attack from behind. They may escape and rejoin their side. And every soldier assigned to watch them is one soldier unavailable for the new fight. Value has collided with security. Security usually wins. This is one reason honourable surrender and ransom never created a universal shield around elite warriors. The customs were real. By the later Middle Ages, elite captives could expect recognisable practices of surrender, custody, ransom, and even parole. But those practices operated inside war, not outside it. Commanders could forbid men from accepting surrender while fighting was still undecided. The reason is almost embarrassingly practical. Capturing somebody is distracting. You stop fighting. You disarm him. You argue about who took him. You lead him somewhere. You find a guard. You begin thinking about profit while the enemy is still trying to kill you. A battlefield full of soldiers collecting private prizes can become a battlefield lost by soldiers who stopped paying attention. So timing matters. Yesterday, the right name might have saved you. 10 minutes earlier, the same name might have done nothing. You walk past the well-dressed captive from before. He no longer looks comfortable. The rumour has reached him too. He understands the arithmetic. If the enemy returns, his captors face a choice between guarding him and defending themselves. His ransom may be large. His danger is immediate. That tension appears with brutal clarity at Agincourt in 1415. During the battle, Henry V ordered many French prisoners killed. The exact motives, sequence, numbers, and implementation remain matters that need careful handling, but scholarship connects the order with English fears that the French might renew the attack while large numbers of captives remained behind the English fighting force. That is the important mechanism. Men worth money could become liabilities in minutes. You do not need to turn every battlefield into Agincourt to understand the rule. The rule is pressure. A prisoner survives partly because the captor has enough control to treat him as a prisoner. Remove that control, and the category becomes unstable. The man sitting beside you can slide backward from captive to enemy. The reverse can happen too. A fighter who looked dangerous during pursuit can become profitable once resistance ends. So medieval surrender is not a door you pass through once. It is a condition that has to be maintained. You watch guards move their captives closer together. Someone orders more men to watch them. Ropes appear. Men who had been allowed to sit separately are pushed into a tighter group. The prisoners complain. Nobody cares. The captors are spending more labour to preserve their investment. That tells you something useful. Mercy and money can point in the same direction. But they are not the same thing. A captor may protect a prisoner because killing him would destroy a ransom claim. A prisoner may behave obediently because escape would destroy the protection attached to surrender. Both sides can follow rules that look civilized while pursuing very practical interests. That does not make the rules fake. It makes them functional. They reduce uncertainty when both sides believe cooperation is worth more than immediate violence. The problem comes when that calculation changes. Fear can change it. Orders can change it. Hatred can change it. The memory of friends killed in the battle can change it. A commander who believes prisoners threaten his army can change it with a sentence. And status does not always rescue you once that happens. This is the midpoint where the morning stops behaving the way you expected. Until now, the field seemed to be sorting people by value. The wounded with strong networks attracted help. Recognizable captives attracted attention. High-status prisoners could become financial assets. It would be easy to build a simple rule from that. The richer you are, the safer you are. But war keeps breaking simple rules. A wealthy prisoner is safer only while his wealth remains more useful than his death, removal, or abandonment. A wounded lord with attendants may receive more effort than an unknown infantryman, but if the army must march immediately, even attendants have limits. A famous knight may be worth a fortune, but if accepting his surrender exposes his captor to a spear in the back, negotiation can wait forever. Circumstance can outrank status. You feel the shift when the alarm finally fades. No fresh enemy appears. Men relax slowly. Weapons lower. The prisoners remain alive. Their value returns. Nothing about them changed. Only the danger around them did. That is perhaps the strangest part. A man can become worth saving, then worth killing, then worth saving again without moving from the same patch of ground. The system is not measuring his humanity. It is measuring pressure. Now the guards begin asking names again. One captive is separated because somebody recognizes his family. Another is left with the ordinary group. A third is too badly wounded to answer. The machinery of value starts back up as though the interruption never happened. But you have seen the weakness beneath it. Ransom depends on control. Control depends on victory. Victory depends on men, horses, information, discipline, and time. And all of those are fragile the morning after a battle. You turn away from the prisoners. Near your feet lies a helmet no one is wearing. A little farther on, a sword has been pushed half into the mud. A dead man still has a belt around his waist. Another has already lost his boots. The living have been sorted according to danger and value. Now the same process begins with objects. The battlefield is about to become a marketplace without stalls. You bend down beside the helmet. It is not decorative. It is iron, shaped by skilled labour, bought with money, carried through a campaign, and useful to anyone who can wear it, repair it, sell it, or break it down for material. Yesterday it belonged to a man. This morning, if that man is dead and his side has lost the field, the helmet has entered a different economy. Someone picks it up. Nobody asks the corpse. That is the first thing to understand about stripping the dead. It can look, from a modern distance, like a final insult added to killing. Sometimes humiliation or vengeance certainly mattered, but on medieval battlefields, practical value mattered too. Weapons, armour, belts, clothing, horses, and metal fittings represented labour and expense. Leaving useful equipment scattered across a field made little sense when victorious soldiers, commanders, servants, and local people could recover it. The dead no longer need equipment. The living do. You walk a few paces and see the process at work. A man kneels beside a corpse and pulls at a buckle. It sticks. He turns the body slightly, gets better leverage, and tries again. This is not elegant work. Armour is worn on a human body, fastened around it, layered with cloth, leather, straps, mail, plates, or other pieces depending on period and status. Removing useful equipment from someone who is limp, muddy, swollen, wounded, or dead can take effort. If blood has dried around fabric, if straps are damaged, or if a body lies beneath another body, recovery becomes slower. So value meets labour again. What is worth taking first? A sword is obvious. A good helmet can be obvious. A horse is even more obvious if it survived. Smaller metal objects matter because metal itself has value. Belts, buckles, knives, spurs, and pieces of defensive equipment can be reused, repaired, sold, or redistributed. Clothing can matter too. A cloak is cloth. Boots are boots. Nothing about being ordinary makes these things free. A modern viewer may look at a medieval soldier and see costume. The people standing here see property. There is a reason surviving medieval military equipment represents only a fraction of what once existed. Metal was repeatedly reused. One scholarly arms and armour source notes that accounts of Bannockburn describe the slain being stripped, and emphasises how valuable metals and fabrics could be reused rather than simply abandoned. You do not need Bannockburn to be a universal rule. It is evidence for the logic. Winning gives access. Access allows recovery. Recovery turns defeat into material gain. Now a disagreement starts beside you. Two men reach for the same sword. One says he found the body. The other says the man fell during his part of the fighting. Neither argument is really about the dead owner. It is about entitlement. Spoils create rules because valuable things create disputes. Those rules vary by army, ruler, place, and period. In 13th century Castile, for example, royal law could regulate the division of booty and reserve a share for the king rather than treating everything taken in war as private finders-keepers. That matters because the battlefield is not simply a free market in mud. Power follows the loot. A commander may claim especially valuable captures. A lord may expect a share. A soldier may believe something belongs to him because he physically took it. Custom may distinguish different kinds of booty. The exact formula is less important than the mechanism. Victory creates things that can be claimed. Claims require authority. Authority reaches down into objects as small as a buckle. You keep walking. A dead horse lies near the road. Another horse, riderless but alive, has been caught and tied farther back. The difference between those two animals is enormous. A living horse can carry a man, pull, breed, travel, or be sold. Depending on type and quality, it can represent far more value than many individual pieces scattered on the field. So catching loose horses is not just tidying. It is recovery of mobile wealth. The same principle applies to weapons. A weapon does not become useless because its owner lost. It changes hands, and once enough objects change hands, the material balance of the campaign changes too. Victors can replenish themselves from defeat. Losers may escape alive but leave behind equipment they cannot easily replace. That hidden cost follows them off the field. A man who throws away his shield to run faster survives the morning. But if he reaches his army tomorrow, he still needs another shield. The object lying at your feet is therefore part of two stories. It is loot for one side. It is a shortage for the other. That is why stripping is more than a grim detail. It converts military collapse into economic loss. You stop beside another corpse. This one has already been worked over. The weapon is gone. The belt is gone. Some outer equipment is gone. The body looks strangely smaller without the objects that once announced a fighting role. This creates a new problem. Identity. Yesterday, equipment helped tell you something about a man. Heraldic signs, clothing quality, livery, badges, weapons, horse furniture. And companions could connect a person to household, rank, or allegiance. Remove enough of that material context, and the body becomes harder to read. A corpse without equipment may still have a recognizable face. Unless the face is damaged, it may still have clothing. Unless useful clothing has been taken, it may have people searching for it. Unless those people are dead, captured, fleeing, or miles away. Each useful thing removed from the body can make the body less informative. That does not mean looters are deliberately erasing identity. It means one practical process interferes with another. Recovering property makes identification harder. You turn the man over. Nothing obvious tells you his name. No document appears conveniently in his hand. There is no metal tag around his neck. If someone knows his face, he may become a person again. If nobody does, he may remain simply one of the dead. This is where archaeology can be both powerful and frustrating. A battlefield may preserve scattered metal objects, weapon fragments, projectiles, graves, or human remains, but absence can be produced by recovery as well as by combat. Historic England notes the archaeological richness of Towton, while also warning that blank areas in finds distributions can reflect uneven modern recovery rather than an absence of fighting. The ground does not hand historians a complete inventory. Neither did it hand one to the people standing here. By late morning, the field is physically changing. Useful objects move toward the living. Bodies become barer. Loose horses disappear into custody. Weapons collect in hands and piles. What looked at dawn like frozen chaos is being dismantled piece by piece. And as the equipment leaves, another question becomes urgent. Who was the person underneath it? You look down at the stripped body. For the first time since the fighting ended, there is almost nothing left to tell you. You look down at the stripped body. The first problem is that a dead man can become anonymous very quickly. Yesterday, identity was carried everywhere with him. It was in the men beside him, the banner over him, the horse beneath him, the colours on cloth, the quality of his equipment, the place he occupied in a formation, and the voice that answered when someone called his name. This morning, much of that can be gone. The horse may have run, the banner may be captured, the companions may be dead, wounded, scattered, or already marching away. The helmet may be missing. The belt may have been taken. The outer clothing may be torn, muddy, or removed. What remains is a face. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes it is not. You kneel closer. The man is young, or at least he seems young beneath the dirt. There is dried blood near the hairline. One cheek is pressed into the ground. You turn the head slightly and realize how little information a face gives when nobody nearby knows it. You can describe him. You cannot name him. That difference matters. Medieval armies did not carry standardized identification tags designed to survive death and separation from the unit. Recognition depended much more heavily on social knowledge, visible signs, personal belongings, clothing, heraldry, household affiliation, and other people who knew who they were looking at. So identification is easiest while the social world around the body is still intact. A servant recognizes a lord. A brother recognizes a brother. A companion recognizes a familiar scar. A household man recognizes a coat or badge. Someone remembers exactly where a certain knight fell. Someone else remembers the horse he rode. The body becomes a person because memory reconnects it to a network. But those networks have just been smashed apart. You hear men calling names again. They move slowly now. Earlier they were searching for the wounded, listening for answers. Now they are searching for silence. One man turns over 3 bodies before stopping at the 4th. He knows this one. You can tell before he speaks. There is no dramatic cry. He simply stays still for a moment. Then he calls someone else over. Recognition changes the work. Once a body is identified, new possibilities appear. It may be carried away. Its death may be reported. Property may be claimed or returned. A family, household, lord, religious community, or political authority may care where it is buried. An unidentified body has fewer advocates. That does not mean nobody cares. It means nobody present can easily attach the body to a specific set of obligations. You stand and walk toward another cluster. Here, the problem is worse. Several men lie close together. Their clothing is similar. Mud has covered much of the detail. Some equipment is gone. One body is face down. Another has injuries that make facial recognition difficult. You understand why the modern habit of asking for an exact casualty list can be misleading when projected backward. Counting bodies is one task. Naming them is another. The two are not equal. A commander may want to know how badly his army has suffered. A household may want to know whether one particular man is alive. A chronicler writing later may give a number. A family may wait for a person who never returns. Those are different kinds of knowledge. The battlefield does not produce them automatically. Even knowing who is missing can take time. Men may have fled. They may be prisoners. They may be wounded somewhere else. They may have reached a village. They may have joined another group during the retreat. They may be lying 20 yards away under a body no one has moved yet. Absence is not proof of death. Not on this morning. You move toward the edge of the field, where the ground rises slightly. A man is standing with 2 others, pointing back toward the fighting area. He is reconstructing movement. We were there. He went forward there. Then the line broke. I saw him near the ditch. This is identification through geography. The field itself becomes a memory aid. Men remember where formations stood, where banners moved, where commanders were last seen, where a charge stopped, where a horse fell, where a group was surrounded. Those memories guide searches, but memories are imperfect. Battle compresses attention. Fear narrows vision. Smoke, dust, rain, darkness, terrain, and bodies block sight. A man may sincerely remember the wrong place, so searching becomes an argument between memory and ground. You follow them toward the ditch. There are bodies there. Too many. The men begin again. Turn. Look. Move. Call. Check. One body has a recognizable piece of clothing. The group reacts. Then disappointment. Wrong man. You keep going. This is where objects become double-edged. A badge can identify. A badge can also be missing. A coat can distinguish. A coat can also be borrowed, stripped, covered, or damaged. Heraldry can help with elites, but it does not turn every dead person into an open book. And most people on a battlefield are not famous enough for strangers to recognize their devices, faces, or names on sight. Identity is local knowledge. Lose the local people, and the signs become weaker. Eventually, one of the searchers stops beside a body near the ditch. He looks at the hands first, then the face, then the boots. He says the name quietly. The search is over. But now another process begins. The dead man has become connected again to the living. Someone may need to remove personal possessions before burial. Someone may need to report the death. Someone may decide whether the body can be transported. Someone may want religious rites. Someone may want him buried somewhere specific. Each of those wishes requires labour. That is the part sentiment cannot escape. A body is heavy. A cart is limited. A journey takes time. The army may be leaving. The weather may be warming. There may be hundreds or thousands of dead depending on the battle. Recognition does not guarantee individual burial. It simply changes what people may try to do. You look back toward the anonymous body you first examined. Nobody has come for him. Perhaps somebody will. Perhaps his companions are searching the wrong section of the field. Perhaps they are prisoners. Perhaps they are dead too. Perhaps nobody even knows he is missing yet. This is where the morning after becomes quietly cruel. A person can move from known to unknown without losing his name. The name still exists somewhere. A mother knows it. A wife knows it. A brother knows it. A village knows it. But none of those people may be standing here. On the field, identity survives only if something connects the body back to them. You hear a cart creak behind you. Several bodies are being moved. Not all are identified. They cannot wait forever. The practical problem is growing. As equipment disappears and search is slow, the field contains more bodies than individual attention can easily manage. Soon the question will no longer be who each man was. It will be what can be done with all of them. The morning is moving toward burial, and burial begins with arithmetic. The anonymous body remains where you left it. A few yards away, however, men are arguing over a horse. That tells you where the morning has moved. The first hours after battle were about survival, control, and recognition. Now the victors begin turning control into possession. Armour is lifted, weapons are gathered, horses are caught, prisoners are separated according to value, and every useful thing lying on the ground creates the same question. Who gets it? The answer is not simply whoever bends down first. Medieval armies developed customs, agreements, and ordinances governing spoils because booty mattered too much to leave entirely to chance. By the 14th century, surviving English evidence shows how important prisoners, horses, equipment, and movable wealth could be to soldiers of very different ranks. while military ordinances could address the division of ransom and spoils alongside discipline and command. You see why, as soon as two men grab the same reins, the horse is frightened and tired, but alive. One man says he caught it. The other says its rider surrendered to him. That difference may determine whether the horse belongs with the prisoner, with the captor, with a superior claimant, or with some wider pool of booty, according to the rules being followed. Nobody standing here needs an abstract theory of property. They need someone with authority to settle the argument. A superior arrives. Voices drop. That is the hidden step between victory and profit. Someone must make claims enforceable. Without authority, booty becomes another reason for armed men on the same side to fight each other. A victorious army that dissolves into private quarrels over horses, captives, and equipment has converted success into disorder. So commanders have an interest in regulating greed, not eliminating it. Greed can be useful. It motivates men to capture valuable enemies, recover equipment, and stay interested in the material rewards of campaigning. But greed also pulls men out of formation. It encourages unauthorized looting. It creates disputes. It can make a soldier chase a rich-looking prisoner when he should be following an order. The same appetite that rewards victory can weaken the army that won it. You walk past a pile of recovered weapons. There is nothing ceremonial about it. A spear shaft is wood and iron. A sword is skilled labor embodied in metal. A helmet can be reused. A saddle can be repaired. A horse can carry someone tomorrow. The battlefield is not just covered with relics. It is covered with capital. That is why spoils mattered from the crown down to ordinary fighting men in 14th century English warfare. Dennis Hayes' study of the division of spoils describes prisoners, horses, equipment, and other movable wealth as central winnings of war, important to rank-and-file soldiers, magnates, and the crown alike. Now imagine what happens when the crown also wants a share. In 13th century Castile, the Siete Partidas did not treat booty as an undefined private bonus. Its military provisions regulated booty and ransom, and included royal claims over portions of movable spoils and certain especially valuable captures. The exact rules belong to that legal and political setting, not to every medieval army, but they prove the larger point. Battlefield wealth could be subject to hierarchy before anyone finished carrying it away. You stop beside three objects: a sword, a saddle, a purse. Their size tells you almost nothing about their political importance. The purse may contain immediate money. The sword may be useful or prestigious. The saddle may belong to a horse worth far more than either. Now add a prisoner. Suddenly the scale changes. A noble captive may represent a future ransom larger than everything lying in this patch of mud. That creates another ownership problem. Who captured him? The man who first grabbed his bridle? The man who accepted his surrender? The lord under whose banner the captor serves? The commander who claims rights over important prisoners? These questions are not decorative details of chivalry. They determine money. And money creates memory. Men remember exactly when someone yielded. They remember who touched him first. They remember witnesses. They remember promises made in the confusion. A surrender can become an argument that survives long after the blood dries. You pass the well-dressed captive again. He is still being kept apart. Now you understand why. Separation protects more than his body. It protects a claim. If he disappears into a crowd of ordinary prisoners, escapes, is taken by another group, or is killed during confusion, somebody may lose a fortune. So custody becomes a form of accounting. A guard is not merely stopping a man from running. He is guarding future income. This changes how you look at the people around him. One soldier has a dented helmet under his arm. Another leads a captured horse. A third watches two prisoners. They are all carrying pieces of the victory. But none of those pieces exists independently. The horse needs fodder. The prisoner needs guarding. The armour has weight. The weapons have to be transported. Loot can slow an army. A successful campaign can therefore produce a strange problem. The more you gain, the more you have to move. You see men deciding what is worth the burden. A damaged shield may be left. A good blade is not. A dead horse is mostly a carcass. A live one is wealth with legs. An ordinary garment may be useful if someone needs clothing, but a heavy low-value object may not survive the march simply because carrying it costs more than abandoning it. Value is always being compared with effort. That comparison reaches the dead too. A body wearing expensive equipment attracts attention because the equipment can move into the economy of the victors. Once stripped, the body becomes less economically urgent. It has moved from asset to disposal problem. That sounds cold. It is also the mechanism organizing the field. You can now see several sorting systems operating at once. The living are divided into mobile and immobile. The defeated into prisoner and fugitive. Prisoners into valuable and less valuable. Equipment into worth carrying and worth leaving. Bodies into recognized and unknown. And above all of them sits authority, deciding which private claims will be allowed to stand. The battlefield is becoming orderly, but it is not becoming equal. The men with the strongest claims, best connections, highest status, and most useful property are moving toward the center of attention. Everything else is moving outward, toward piles, toward carts, toward abandonment, toward graves. You turn back toward the bodies. The useful objects are disappearing from them. The prisoners are disappearing into custody. The horses are disappearing down the road. What remains on the ground is becoming less valuable to the victorious army with every passing hour. And there is a great deal of it. Soon property will no longer be the largest problem on the field. Bodies will. You look across the field and notice something strange. It seems larger now. Not because the ground has changed, but because the useful things are leaving it. Horses are being led away, prisoners are under guard, weapons are gathered, armour disappears piece by piece. Men who can still walk are moving toward camps, roads, towns, or commanders. What remains is harder to move. Bodies? A great many bodies. This is the point when the morning after stops being mainly about individual decisions and becomes a problem of scale. One body can be carried. 10 bodies can be moved with effort. Hundreds change the nature of the task. Thousands can overwhelm almost everything around them. Not every medieval battle produced enormous piles of dead, and casualty figures in chronicles are often unreliable. But some battles did leave enough dead that burial could not be handled as a series of careful private funerals. When that happens, the question is no longer simply, how should this person be buried? It becomes, how do we clear this field at all? You stand beside a body and try to lift one arm. Heavy, dead weight is exactly that. A body does not help you. It does not shift its feet when you pull. It does not brace when you lift. It catches on clothing, equipment, mud, stones, roots, and other bodies. 2 men can move one corpse more easily than 1 man can. But 2 men moving one corpse means 2 men doing nothing else. Now multiply that problem. The arithmetic turns ugly very quickly. Suppose a field contains hundreds of dead. Each body must be found, perhaps searched, perhaps identified, perhaps stripped of useful equipment, then moved or buried where it lies. If a grave is to be dug, somebody must dig it. If bodies are to be carried there, somebody must carry them. Shovels matter. Picks matter. Carts matter. Horses matter. So does soil. Soft earth is different from frozen ground. Dry summer soil is different from rain-soaked clay. Rocky ground can turn a grave into hours of labour. A shallow grave is easier than a deep one, but less secure from animals and disturbance. Every practical choice pushes against another. Then there is weather. The dead do not wait politely while victors organize themselves. Warmth accelerates decay. Rain turns paths into mud and fills depressions. Cold slows some processes, but makes digging harder if the ground is frozen. The smell that was only beginning at dawn can become impossible to ignore as hours and days pass. That creates pressure. Not philosophical pressure. Physical pressure. Move them. Cover them. Get them away from where living people are trying to camp, eat, treat wounds, gather equipment, or move traffic. The battlefield is becoming a sanitation problem, even though nobody standing here would use that modern phrase. You see men dragging a corpse toward a shallow depression. The body leaves a line through the grass. No one is being gentle. That does not necessarily mean contempt. Gentleness is expensive when labor is scarce. A careful individual funeral requires time, space, tools, transport, clergy where available, and people who know who the dead person is. A mass burial requires fewer decisions. Dig, carry, place, cover. The simplicity is brutal because the scale demands simplicity. You hear someone complain about the smell. Another man tells him to keep digging. That is probably the most honest answer available. The dead have become work, and the work is exhausting. You take a shovel. The first push into the ground feels manageable. The 20th does not. Your shoulders already hurt from carrying the wounded earlier. Your hands are blistered from weapons, reins, straps, and lifting. You have eaten badly. You may have slept little or not at all. Now you are expected to dig. War does not provide a separate fresh workforce for the unpleasant parts. The same bodies that fought often have to perform the aftermath. Local labour can be drawn in too. Nearby communities may become involved in clearing and burial, whether through obligation, payment, authority, necessity, or simple proximity. The army can leave. The field cannot. That is one of the deepest inequalities of the aftermath. Soldiers move on. Local people inherit the ground. A battlefield may sit beside farmland, roads, villages, churches, streams, or pasture. The dead occupy a landscape that somebody normally uses. So clearing them is not only about respect. It is about returning land to the living. You keep digging. The trench grows slowly. Someone brings another body, then another. The individuality you struggled to preserve earlier begins to disappear under repetition. A man is placed beside a man he may never have known. An enemy may lie beside an enemy. Men of different ages, occupations, and social backgrounds can end up sharing the same earth because burial follows space more easily than biography. This does not mean medieval people were indifferent to proper burial. Quite the opposite. Christian burial, prayer, consecrated ground, and care for the dead carried enormous religious importance in much of medieval Europe. That is why battlefield conditions create tension rather than cancel belief. People may want one thing and be able to do another. A body may ideally belong in consecrated ground, but the nearest churchyard may be too small. Transport may be impossible. The army may be leaving. The number of dead may be overwhelming. So practical necessity can force temporary, mass, or battlefield burial. Sometimes those choices are revisited later. Bodies can be moved. Graves can be reopened. Important dead can be transferred elsewhere. A battlefield burial does not always mean the story of the body ends there. But right now, nobody has time to think decades ahead. A cart arrives. It carries several corpses. You and another man pull the first one down. There is a dull impact when it hits the ground. You both stop for half a second. Then you reach for the next. That tiny pause matters. The work may become repetitive, but the people doing it are still people. They get tired. They become numb. They joke badly. They curse the mud. They avoid looking at faces. They recognize someone and suddenly stop. Humanity does not disappear under mass burial. It flickers unpredictably inside the labour. You look at the trench. It is not deep enough. Someone says so. Nobody disagrees. You start digging again. By now the morning is nearly gone. The battle ended yesterday, but its physical consequences are becoming more demanding rather than less. The living have been found. The valuable have been claimed. The movable has been moved. What remains is the part victory cannot profit from. Weight, decay, earth, and the uncomfortable fact that hundreds of individual lives can become one collective burial problem. Soon, even that burial will reveal another hierarchy. Because not every body is destined for the same grave. You keep digging until the edge of the trench finally reaches your knee. Then someone tells you to stop. Not because the grave is finished, because another cart has arrived. The wheels sink into the soft ground as it comes toward you. 4 bodies lie across the bed, arranged with the practical closeness of objects being moved rather than people being mourned. The driver jumps down. 2 men take the first body by the shoulders and ankles. Lift, turn, lower, then the next. You have reached the part of the morning where burial becomes less like a funeral and more like logistics. That sounds irreverent, only if you forget the scale. A normal burial is organized around one person. There is a name, a family, a church, a grave, a sequence of prayers, and people whose attention can remain on that individual. A battlefield can destroy that scale in a single afternoon. At Visby on Gotland in 1361, the dead from the battle outside the city wall were buried in large mass graves. The Swedish History Museum describes the soldiers and their equipment as having been buried swiftly after the fighting, and later excavation found human remains, together with unusually well-preserved armour and weapons. That detail matters because armour is valuable. You already watched men remove useful equipment from corpses. Iron, mail, plates, weapons, belts, and clothing can be reused or sold. Normally, the victors have strong reasons to recover them. At Visby, however, substantial equipment went into the earth with the dead. That tells you something about pressure. Not necessarily one simple thing. We cannot stand beside the grave diggers and ask exactly what each person thought. But rapid burial, the number of dead, late July conditions, the labour required to strip bodies, and the material actually found in the graves together show that the ordinary incentive to recover every useful object did not always win. Sometimes the field had to be cleared. Now you understand what that feels like. The cart driver asks where to place the next bodies. Someone points. No ceremony. Just space. You help move one man toward the trench. He is still wearing part of his defensive equipment. Yesterday, you would have noticed the value immediately. Now you notice the weight. Metal makes the body harder to carry. Removing it would take more time. More hands, more bending, cutting, pulling and sorting. The grave is already waiting. For once, the cheaper decision may be to bury the value. That reversal is what makes Visby so useful. The battlefield economy you have been following is powerful, but it is not absolute. Even valuable material can lose its priority when time, decay, manpower, and sheer numbers push harder. You lower the body. It lands beside another. Then another comes down. The arrangement is tight because empty space has become a resource too. Archaeological records for the Visby gravefield describe multiple mass graves, some several metres across and more than a metre deep. One excavated grave also contained a layer of lime and mortar over the skeletons. The graves themselves preserve the physical answer to a question the mourning forced on survivors. How do you place many dead into the earth quickly enough for the living to move on? You climb out. Your boots are coated with soil. A man beside you wipes his forehead with a muddy sleeve. Nobody looks noble. This is labour. The same battle that produces stories about kings, banners, charges and courage also produces holes that someone has to dig. That person may be a soldier. He may be a servant. He may be a local labourer brought into the work. He may know the men being buried. He may know none of them. The sources do not give us a complete roster of every person who dug every battlefield grave, so the safest thing is to stay with the mechanism rather than invent a tidy burial crew. Bodies require hands. Graves require tools. And somebody nearby has to supply both. You take the shovel again. The soil falls differently now because the trench is deeper. Each load has to be thrown farther. Your back tightens. The work slows. This is why the phrase, "they were buried in a mass grave," can hide almost everything interesting. A mass grave is not one action. It is hundreds of repeated actions. Choose ground. Dig. Move bodies. Lower them. Fit them together. Perhaps search them first. Perhaps identify some. Perhaps remove equipment. Perhaps not. Then cover what you have placed. The simplicity comes only when the whole sequence is compressed into one sentence. On the ground, it takes hours. At Visby, the archaeological evidence also preserves the violence that came before this work. The Swedish History Museum notes severe injuries on skeletons from the mass graves, including heavy trauma to arms, legs, and skulls. The bodies being handled were not clean figures arranged for burial. They carried the physical damage of combat into the grave. You feel the difference when another corpse arrives. One leg does not lie naturally. Two men adjust it so the body fits. That is all. No speech is needed. The grave forces its own geometry. Human bodies become difficult shapes that must share limited space. And yet mass burial should not be mistaken automatically for contempt. That would be too easy. The existence of a large shared grave tells you how bodies were disposed of. It does not, by itself, tell you how every living person felt about them. A man can be exhausted and still care. He can pray while working quickly. He can recognize a friend and still place him beside strangers because there is nowhere else. He can want consecrated burial and still face a field that must be cleared before ideal arrangements are possible. Necessity and belief can occupy the same trench. You see that tension when someone makes the sign of the cross before another body is lowered. Then the work continues. One gesture. Back to the shovel. That is enough. By now, the sun is higher. The morning after the battle is becoming afternoon. The trench begins to fill. You can no longer see the ground beneath the first layer of bodies. Equipment catches the light in places where it has not been removed. A patch of mail, a buckle, a piece of plate. Objects that should have been wealth are about to become archaeology. Nobody standing here knows that they are simply trying to finish. You throw another load of soil down. It lands on metal with a dull sound. Then another. Soon the equipment disappears. Then the clothing. Then the faces. The battlefield is being converted into earth. But even this apparently collective ending will not treat everyone the same. Some bodies will be searched for more carefully. Some will be moved elsewhere. Some names will attract families, households, churches, or rulers with enough power to make different arrangements. The mass grave solves the problem of numbers. It does not erase status. And that is the next hierarchy waiting at the edge of the trench. You stand at the edge of the grave and realize that even burial has a hierarchy. The trench is filling. But not every body is coming here. Some are being carried past it. That is the first clue. A man with recognizable status, family connections, household servants, Clerical ties or political importance may attract efforts that an unknown soldier does not. If someone can identify him, claim him, transport him, and pay the cost, his body may be moved away from the battlefield rather than lowered into the common earth. The dead are equal in weight. They are not equal in logistics. You watch two men carry a covered body toward a cart. Nobody shouts. Nobody argues. The cart is already waiting. That tells you that someone made a decision before you arrived. This one goes elsewhere. Perhaps to a church. Perhaps to a monastery. Perhaps to a family burial place. Perhaps only to a nearby settlement where more formal rites can be arranged. The exact destination varies, and the evidence rarely lets us reconstruct every ordinary body's route. But the mechanism is clear enough. Recognition creates options. Resources turn options into action. That distinction matters because medieval Christian burial was not merely a practical disposal method. In much of Western Europe, burial in consecrated ground, prayers for the dead, memorial observance, and proximity to religious institutions carried spiritual and social importance. So the question, where is he buried, can be about more than geography. It can be about belonging. You leave the trench and follow the cart. The road is rough. Every rut reminds you that transport is expensive in effort. A dead man has to be lifted onto the vehicle. The vehicle needs an animal or people to pull it. The road must be passable. Someone has to accompany the body. And all of that competes with wounded men, baggage, food, captured equipment, and living horses that the army also needs to move. A family may want the body home. Wanting is not the same as being able to move it. Distance can defeat affection. So can weather. So can war. That is why battlefield burial and later reburial can exist side by side. A body may be buried quickly because immediate conditions demand it, then moved later when relatives, rulers, religious communities, or political circumstances make another arrangement possible. The first grave does not always have to be the last one. You can see why this matters at places such as Towton. The battle there in 1461 left mass graves associated with the fighting, and decades later, in 1483, Richard III ordered that bodies from battlefield graves be moved to consecrated ground at Saxton. The dead had been buried. Then the burial itself became unfinished business. That tells you something important. The aftermath of a medieval battle does not necessarily end when the soil is closed. Memory can reopen the ground. Politics can reopen it. Religion can reopen it. Status can reopen it. You keep walking toward a churchyard. The difference in space is immediate. A battlefield grave is shaped by emergency. A churchyard is shaped by community. Paths, walls, graves, markers, clergy, nearby buildings, and repeated use turn burial into part of ordinary social life. But even here, not everyone receives the same treatment. Location within sacred space can matter. Monuments can matter. Tombs, inscriptions, chapels, and commemorative foundations can preserve elite identities in ways that a simple grave cannot. Money continues to speak after death. A wealthy family can support prayers. A lord can be remembered in stone. An ordinary soldier may be remembered only by the people who knew him. And an unidentified man may disappear from the written record entirely. That is one of the strongest biases in the evidence. The people whose names survive most clearly are often the people whose social position generated documents, heraldic records, chronicles, monuments, accounts, or legal disputes. The unknown dead rarely leave that kind of paper trail. So when you read a medieval account that carefully lists fallen nobles and then gives a vague number for everyone else, you are not seeing the battlefield evenly. You are seeing the social structure of record-keeping. The archive has a hierarchy too. You stop beside the church wall. A priest is speaking with two men who have brought a body. Again, do not invent a universal ritual from one scene. What matters is the negotiation. Can this person be identified? Can he be buried here? Who is responsible? Is there space? Who pays? Does someone claim the body? Does the church have authority over the burial? These questions may not all be spoken in every case, but they show why burial is not merely digging. Burial links: body, institution, family, status, religion, and land. The grave is social, and because it is social, burial can also become political. A victorious ruler may want enemies treated in one way and important allies in another. A religious house may preserve the memory of patrons. A family may recover a body not only from grief, but because burial beside ancestors confirms lineage, status, and continuity. Even the placement of the dead can say who still belongs to which community after the fighting has rearranged the living one. You think back to the mass trench. There, bodies were fitted together because space and time were limited. Here, one body may receive separate attention because someone has enough connection to create it. The contrast is uncomfortable. A dead lord may be carried miles. A dead infantryman may be placed in the nearest available grave. A man with known family may be mourned by name. Another man may be counted only as part of a total. Neither difference tells you who suffered more. It tells you who could still mobilize resources after death. That is the deeper mechanism. Status survives the body because status exists in other people. A title survives in memory. Property survives in inheritance. Household ties survive in servants and kin. Religious obligations survive in institutions. A corpse cannot demand a better burial. The living demand it for him. You return toward the battlefield. By now, the grave is almost full. Someone is spreading soil across the last visible bodies. The surface becomes flatter with every shovel load. Soon there will be nothing obvious to distinguish the noble who was never found from the common soldier who was never identified. The earth creates an equality the living did not, but only after the living have made every distinction they can. Recognized, unrecognized, claimed, unclaimed, transported, buried here, buried elsewhere, possibly moved again later. The sorting system has reached the grave itself. And now, as the army begins to pull away, another group approaches the field from outside it. They are not soldiers looking for prisoners or commanders looking for spoils. They are people looking for missing men. The battle is about to enter the civilian world. The first civilians arrive cautiously. They do not walk onto the field as if entering a market. They stop at the edge. Look. Listen. Then move. That hesitation makes sense. A battlefield the morning after is not automatically safe just because the main fighting is over. Armed men still control parts of the ground. Prisoners are being moved. Horses are loose. Equipment is scattered. Small groups may still be returning from pursuit. Nobody approaching from a nearby village can be certain that every soldier they meet is friendly, disciplined, or interested in leaving civilians alone. So the first step is permission, or at least tolerance. A servant may come looking for a master. A priest may come because bodies need rites and the wounded need attention. Local labourers may be required to help clear the field. A family member may come because someone never returned home. The motives differ. The risk does not. You watch a woman standing beside the road. She is not calling loudly. She is studying faces, one after another. That is enough to change the whole atmosphere. For most of the morning, the battlefield has been organised by military value. Who can fight, who can walk, who can be ransomed, what equipment can be carried, which bodies can be moved. Now another system arrives. Relationship. This man is not merely a dead infantryman. He is someone's son. That wounded retainer is not merely a burden. He works in a household where people know exactly what is missing when he does not return. The civilian world restores identities that the battlefield has been stripping away. But it does not do so evenly. Some families are nearby, others live days away. Some men fought with neighbours who can report what happened. Others disappear in a retreat, become prisoners, or die in a place nobody from home can easily reach. A missing man can remain uncertain for a long time. That uncertainty matters. You may know the battle is over. A household miles away may know only that the army passed through and one person failed to come back. Dead? Captured? Wounded? Deserted? Still travelling? Nobody knows. The morning after can therefore begin months of waiting. You walk with a small group moving across the field. They are looking for one man. The search is not random. Somebody knows roughly where his group fought. Another person remembers the banner. A servant has been told the colour of a coat. They move from body to body, asking anyone nearby whether they recognise a name. This is where local knowledge becomes stronger than official knowledge. A chronicler may later write that hundreds died. A family wants one answer. Was he among them? Those scales rarely meet cleanly. You reach a body, wrong height, another, wrong face. Another has been stripped so thoroughly that clothing no longer helps. The search continues. The field is becoming harder to read because the morning's earlier work has changed it. Equipment is gone. Bodies have been moved. Some graves are already closed. Wounded men have been taken elsewhere. Prisoners are on the road. Every hour that makes the battlefield more orderly can make personal reconstruction more difficult. That is a quiet cruelty. Cleanup destroys evidence. Not maliciously. Practically. A body moved to a grave may no longer be where companions remember seeing it. A captured man may vanish into custody before his family even knows he survived. A wounded man taken to a religious house or nearby town may be safe but unreachable to those searching the field. The battle disperses people before news can catch up. You hear a bell in the distance. That sound belongs to the civilian landscape. Fields still need working. Animals still need feeding. Meals still need cooking. A village does not stop being a village because two armies fought beside it. But the battle has changed its workload. Dead horses must be dealt with. Damaged fences may need repair. Roads may be churned. Crops may be trampled. Buildings may have been used, damaged, or stripped for fuel and materials. Soldiers may have consumed food, fodder, and drink that local people expected to use themselves. The battlefield is only the most visible part of the disruption. War spreads outward through shortages and labour. You follow a cart toward the village. It is carrying a wounded man. The driver is local. That matters. An army can move on. A village cannot move its fields. Once soldiers depart, local communities may remain with the wounded, graves, debris, damaged land, and stories. This is where the cost of victory transfers. The victorious army keeps the prisoners and spoils. The landscape keeps the holes. You pass a house where two wounded men have been laid inside. Neither belongs to the household. There is no grand humanitarian institution at work here. There is simply a roof, water, cloth, and people close enough to help. That can be enough to matter. It also creates burdens. Food must be shared. Blood must be cleaned. A bed or floor space is occupied. Someone has to bring water. Someone has to decide what happens if the wounded man worsens. The army's emergency becomes domestic labour. Again, mostly invisible. The people who carry water into a room rarely appear in heroic battle narratives. But aftermath depends on them. So does burial... You return toward the churchyard and see more people gathering there. Some are asking questions. Some are bringing names. Some are looking for clergy. Information begins to move through conversation. He was last seen near the ditch. He was taken prisoner. He was wounded, but alive. His lord escaped. They buried men near the road. Each statement may be true. Each may also be incomplete. Rumour fills gaps because gaps are unbearable. That is how battles begin turning into stories before historians ever touch them. Families create one version. Soldiers create another. Commanders create another. Clergy may frame events through providence, sin, thanksgiving, or mourning. Political authorities may want a clear victory. The field itself was confused. Memory dislikes confusion. So people simplify. You see it happening in real time. One man says the enemy fled immediately. Another says they fought hard until sunset. Both were there. Both may be describing different parts of the same battle. A third repeats whichever version makes more sense to him. By evening, repetition will make some details feel certain. By next year, some may become tradition. The morning after is therefore not only when bodies are sorted. It is when memory is sorted too. But before that memory hardens, there is still one practical task. Count who is missing. Households need to know. Lords need to know. Commanders need to know. Families need to know. And nobody has a perfect list. You watch the woman from the road finally stop beside a body. This time, she does not move on. Someone beside her lowers his head. No one needs to explain what happened. The battlefield has given one family an answer. For many others, it has not. You turn away. Behind you, graves are closing. Ahead, messengers are already carrying news. The physical battle is disappearing into the ground. The remembered battle is just beginning. And soon someone will decide what this victory is supposed to mean. You leave the churchyard and follow the road back toward the command area. The field behind you is already changing into a story. That happens faster than you might expect. A battle can take hours to fight and years to explain, but the first explanations begin almost immediately. Commanders need reports. Lords need to know who survived. Messengers need something clear enough to carry. Families want names. Clergy want meaning. Victors want confirmation that the risks and losses produce something that can be called success. Confusion does not travel well. Stories do. So the morning after begins simplifying what the battle itself made complicated. You hear one version near the road. The enemy broke before noon. A little farther on, someone says the hardest fighting came late. Another man insists a certain charge decided everything. Someone else says the decisive moment happened somewhere completely different. All of them may be telling the truth as they experienced it. A medieval battlefield is too large, noisy, and fragmented for most participants to see the whole event. A man in one formation knows what happened in front of him. A commander receives reports from multiple directions. A fleeing soldier sees collapse. A victorious retainer may remember only the moment his group began moving forward. Later accounts have to turn these fragments into sequence. That requires selection. Which action came first? Which mattered most? Who deserves credit? Who caused the defeat? Which dead are named? Which are counted only as a number? The remembered battle is built from answers to those questions. You reach a cluster of men around a clerk. Now the morning looks almost administrative. Names are being spoken. Some are written. Others are repeated because the clerk did not hear them properly. A lord is alive. Another is missing. 3 men from one household are wounded. A prisoner of importance has been taken. Someone claims an enemy banner. Someone else reports that a mounted group has not returned from pursuit. This is not yet the clean casualty table a modern reader might want. It is raw information, and raw information changes as it moves. A missing man may later return. A wounded man may die. A prisoner may initially be counted among the dead. A body may be identified hours later. A rumor of a famous death may prove false. So casualty knowledge develops over time, rather than appearing complete at sunrise. That is why precise medieval numbers deserve caution. Chroniclers can report enormous totals, sometimes with political, rhetorical, or moral purposes shaping the figures. Even sincere writers may rely on second-hand information. The people closest to the fighting may know only pieces. The number that survives in a chronicle is not automatically a body count performed with modern accuracy. You watch a messenger mount. He carries a version of the battle away with him. Not every detail. He carries what matters to the person sending him. Victory, defeat, a captured lord, a dead commander, a road now open, a castle relieved, a king safe, an enemy scattered. The battlefield is compressed into useful news. That compression is power. If you can define what the victory means, you can shape what people far from the field believe happened. A ruler may present success as divine favour, rightful judgment, military skill, or proof of legitimacy. The defeated side may explain failure through betrayal, bad terrain, poor advice, misfortune, or overwhelming odds. Neither side needs to invent everything. Selection does enough work. You return to the captured banner you saw earlier. Yesterday it helped organise men in battle. Today it can organise memory. A captured standard is visible evidence that someone lost control of it. Prisoners can be displayed. Important captured equipment can become trophies. Names of prominent dead can circulate. Religious services can give thanks for victory or mourn losses. Objects become arguments. Look what we took. Look who surrendered. Look whose banner fell. Victory becomes something people can see. This matters because most people who later hear about the battle will never walk across the field. They will know it through words, symbols, ceremonies, and stories. The morning after is when those materials begin to separate from the mud that produced them. You hear a priest speaking with several soldiers. The language is different from the clerk's. The clerk wants names. The priest wants meaning. For medieval Christians, victory and defeat could be interpreted through providence, sin, thanksgiving, punishment, or divine favour. That does not mean every soldier understood the battle in exactly the same theological way. It means religion offered one of the strongest languages available for turning catastrophe into order. A field full of random death is difficult to live with. A victory granted for a reason is easier to explain. So prayers, masses, vows, commemorations and foundations can become part of the aftermath. The battle enters sacred memory, then political memory, then family memory. Each version preserves something and loses something. A noble household remembers the lord who died. A village remembers the men who never returned. A ruler remembers the victory. A chronicler remembers the turning point. A widow remembers an empty place at a table. None of these memories is false merely because the others exist. But they are not the same battle. You walk toward the graves again. This is where the difference becomes physical. The official story may contain a clean statement. We won. The ground contains the footnotes. Bodies, broken straps, abandoned shoes, blood in the soil, a cart rut filled with rainwater, a grave where names are already disappearing. The field resists simplification, even as people simplify it. That resistance is useful. It reminds you that a victory can be real without being tidy. One side may control the ground and still lose men it cannot replace. A commander may gain prestige while families lose sons. A soldier may survive and still return home wounded, indebted, or without equipment. A captured noble may live because he is valuable, while an unknown man dies because nobody can move him. The word victory covers all of those outcomes at once. That is why the morning after matters so much. During the battle, survival dominates attention. Afterward, people decide which losses were worth it, which deaths were honourable, which actions were decisive, which prisoners prove status, which graves deserve memory, and which details can safely disappear. You stop beside the field one more time. The noises change completely. No formations, no charge, no horns directing thousands of men, only shovels, wheels, low voices, occasional horses. The battle is no longer being fought with weapons. It is being fought over meaning. By tomorrow, people far away may already know who won. They will not know this smell. They will not know which wounded man waited too long. They will not know which corpse lost its name when the clothing was stripped away. They will receive the cleaner version. That is how history begins. Not when everything is understood. When confusion becomes a story stable enough to repeat, you look toward the road where the messenger disappeared, then back toward the nearly covered graves. One is carrying the battle into memory. The other is carrying it out of sight. And before this journey ends, you have to return to the simplest question of all. What actually happened the morning after? Not in the chronicles. Not in the victory speeches. Here, on the ground, among the people who still had to live through it, you stand on the edge of the field one last time. Almost everything that could move has moved. The army is gathering itself. Prisoners are being taken away. Wounded men have been carried toward whatever shelter, household, cart, church, or camp could receive them. Horses have been caught. Weapons have been collected. Valuable equipment has changed hands. Graves have been opened and closed. What remains is quieter. Not empty. Quieter. That difference is the final answer hiding beneath the whole morning. A medieval battle did not end when the last organised charge stopped. It ended in stages. First the fighting broke apart, then pursuit carried violence beyond the line. Then the wounded became problems of distance and labour. Then prisoners became problems of custody and value. Then equipment became property. Then bodies became questions of identity. Then identity became burial. Then burial became memory. The morning after was the process that converted violence into consequences. You begin walking away from the graves. Your boots are heavy with drying mud. Every object you pass now has a different meaning than it had yesterday. A broken spear is no longer a weapon. A discarded buckle is no longer part of a harness. A shallow rut is no longer where a horse charged. A dark patch in the grass is already becoming just another part of the ground. The battlefield is losing its ability to explain itself. Here, victory stops being a word and becomes work. Someone has to drag the body. Someone has to guard the prisoner. Someone has to dig the grave. Someone has to decide whether the horse belongs to a captor, a commander, or somebody else. Someone has to search a face and decide whether it is familiar. Someone has to carry the news home. Power becomes visible because it determines who can demand attention after the fighting is over. Status becomes visible because some names open doors, even in captivity. Poverty becomes visible because some men have fewer people looking for them. Community becomes visible because the army can leave while villagers, households, churches and families remain with what it has done. And uncertainty becomes visible because even after all that work, many answers never become certain. You do not know the name of everybody. You do not know where every prisoner went. You do not know which wounded man survived the next week. You do not know how many families waited for news that arrived late, wrong, or not at all. You pass the place where the valuable prisoner sat earlier. He is gone now. Perhaps his captor is already thinking about money. Perhaps the prisoner is thinking about home. Perhaps both are thinking about the same future from opposite sides of the transaction. The patch of ground where he sat looks ordinary. A flattened strip of grass. Nothing more. A little farther on is the place where you helped lift the wounded man onto a shield. He is gone too. For him, the mauling may have been the difference between lying unseen and reaching help. Or perhaps the wound was too severe. The field does not tell you. It only shows the mark where the shield dragged through the mud. Sometimes that means rescue. Sometimes captivity. Sometimes stripping. Sometimes burial. Sometimes simply being left until someone else arrives. Agency and constraint sit beside each other in every decision. Nobody on the field controls the whole system. A soldier can choose to carry a friend, but not whether a cart exists. A captor can choose to preserve a prisoner, but not whether renewed fighting makes that prisoner dangerous. A family can want a body returned, but not make distance disappear. A priest can want proper burial, but not create unlimited graves, labour, or time. The mourning is made from those small choices pressing against larger limits. That is why there is no single universal medieval aftermath. There is a recurring structure. Control first, then movement, then sorting, then claims, then disposal, then memory. The details change with century, region, army, weather, terrain, rank, religion, and circumstance. The pressures return. You reach the road. Ahead, the surviving army is already becoming a column instead of a battlefield. Men walk in groups. Carts creak. Horses lower their heads. Some soldiers carry equipment they did not own yesterday. Some carry injuries they will keep for years. Some carry the knowledge that a friend is behind them in the earth. Others still do not know where their friends are. There is no clean moment when everyone agrees that the aftermath is over. For the army, it may end when the march resumes. For a prisoner, it may last until ransom is paid. For a wounded man, it may last through months of healing. For a family, it may last until news arrives. For a village beside the battlefield, it may last until the ground is usable again. For memory. You look back once. From this distance, the field is already less terrible. Distance, does that? You cannot see individual faces now. You cannot see which grave holds whom. You cannot hear the wounded. The entire place begins collapsing into one idea. A battle happened there. That is how history often receives it. A location, a date, a winner, a loser, a casualty estimate. But the morning after refuses to stay that simple. What happened the morning after a medieval battle? People searched, people carried, people guarded, people claimed, people stripped, people identified, people buried, people waited. And through those ordinary actions, the violence of the day before was turned into captivity, property, grief, memory, and a new social reality. That is the title answered once. Now the field can finally recede. The road bends away from it. The noise becomes softer behind you. The world is still there. Fields, hedges, villages, church towers, damp roads, smoke lifting from roofs. War has passed through this place, but mourning continues anyway. A door opens somewhere ahead. You step inside. The room is dim after the open field. There is a wooden bench against one wall. A cup. A folded cloth. A little heat held in the stones from a small fire. Nothing here knows about banners. Nothing here cares who held the field. You sit. For the first time, you notice how tired your legs are. Mud dries around your boots. Your shoulders ache from lifting weight that could not lift itself. Your hands still remember the rough edge of the shield. You loosen your belt. The room grows quieter. Outside, someone leads a horse past the door. The sound fades. You stretch out where there is space. Not a grand bed, just a place where the body can stop answering questions. For hours, every object demanded something from you. A wounded man needed lifting. A prisoner needed watching. A body needed identifying. A grave needed digging. Now nothing needs to be sorted. The room is still. Your breathing slows. The field is farther away with every breath. The dead remain where the living place them. The living carry what they could save, claim, remember, or not forget. And somewhere behind you, under newly turned earth, the morning has finally become silent. You do not need to solve anything else tonight. The road is quiet. The room is quiet. Your hands rest. Your breath settles. And the morning after the battle slips gently out of sight,